Good morning. I'm April Cook. Pronouns are she, her. I became a member of this congregation in 2002. And 2 years later, I ran away from you. And I stayed away for 12 years. And now I'm back for good. My oldest memory is singing away in a manger with my mom at a Methodist Christmas Eve service when I was 3 years old. Mom had a beautiful voice, and she sang her daughters to sleep at night. She sang a lot of hymns. Singing, family, and church were woven tightly together in my childhood. My family moved frequently when I was in elementary school. In each new suburban town, Mom joined the choir in the closest Methodist church and took my sisters and me to Sunday school there. When I was 12, we left the suburbs and moved to a farmhouse 2 miles outside the tiny town of Tully, New York. We joined the town's old drafty Methodist church, and that church shared a parking lot with the drafty old Baptist church where my best friend went. We went to each other's churches for a lot of events. And I didn't know the difference between our denominations, except the Methodists had better music and the Baptists had better potluck dinners. When I was 15, our churches merged. That made national news. The congregation called a new minister, and his oldest son became my high school sweetheart. Stephen and I sang in the church choir, went to 2 worship services on Sunday mornings, taught Sunday school between the services, and went to youth fellowship meetings on Sunday evenings. Stephen's parents and his 3 younger siblings were my in-town family. After high school, Stephen and I drifted apart, and I stopped going to church. When I failed the audition for college chorus, I stopped singing in public. I moved to Florida in 1982, and I saw my family only once or twice a year after that. I mostly ignored my spirituality. I don't remember being miserable then, but it sounds really empty telling you about that now. And on September 11th, 2001, I did feel really empty. I wanted to pray, and I didn't know how or to whom. I wanted to be with wise, loving people, and I didn't know any. I didn't know where to find them. And I was terrified because I needed to get on a plane exactly 1 week after 9/11 to fly to Portland, Oregon, to go with my sister to an equinox festival. We spent 4 days and 3 nights with 300 pagans. At a YMCA camp in the woods. The camp had a limit of 250 people, but that limit was waived every year for this festival because these tree-hugging, dirt-worshipping pagans left that campground in pristine condition. I didn't know much about paganism then. The festival registration packet explained that pagans with many different beliefs and faith traditions were going to be there. From the Wiccans dancing wildly around the ritual fire to the more reserved Unitarian Universalists. I had no idea what that was. After the festival, it was the most diverse group of people I had ever been with. And what brought them together was their reverence for Mother Earth. There was a lot of drumming and dancing, honoring of earth, air, fire, and water, rituals to heal our minds, bodies, and spirits, and quiet times to commune with nature and with each other. After the festival, my sister almost had me convinced to move to Oregon to be near her and my new pagan friends. Instead, I searched the internet for similar groups near me. I found the BeliefNet website. Have any of you taken that questionnaire? Yeah, so you know what it is? It's 20 multiple choice questions about your faiths and beliefs. Your answers generate a list of world religions and faith traditions ranked by how closely your beliefs match theirs. Neo-paganism ranked first on my list, and number 2 was Unitarian Universalism. So I did more research, and that's when I found UUC's website. I read sermons there by a man with a musical name, Abhimanamanchi. I was inspired by his words, but too timid to attend a Sunday service. I lurked on that website for about 4 months, checking on Mondays to see what I'd missed the day before. On MLK Day 2002, I saw I'd missed guest speaker Bill Maxwell the day before. Missing that service made me determined not to miss the next one. It was Bring a Friend Sunday, January 27th, 2002. A few weeks ago, Carol Hamilton and I found a recording of that service in the UUC archives. It is just as inspirational now as it was 20 years ago. The guest musician was Amy Carroll Webb. She's a minister now at the River of Grass UU congregation in the Everglades, and she granted my request to include the songs that we're having in the service today. For Amy's performance on my first UU service, this place was packed to the rafters. I was one of 23 visitors that day that was welcomed by name, and the woman doing the welcoming said she thought she only got about a third of the names of the visitors that day. For me, that service was just the right mix of music, ritual, comfort, hope, and call to action. The hymns were familiar tunes with better words. Amy Carroll Webb's joyful smile reminded me of my mom's smile when she sang. And Abi's message, A Risky Religion, was an excellent introduction to UUism. He asked, if you were arrested for being a UU, would there be enough evidence to convict you? The after-service social hour that day was like social justice hour. Several UUC groups had tables set up to show the work they were doing. At one table, I met a man with a familiar name. He is not here today, John Chase. Maybe he's on Zoom. I had exchanged emails with John the year before about the November Coalition, a group educating people about the war on drugs. I think I met Ray Williamson and Lori Ergel at the LGBT table that day. And it might have been Bill Norsworthy who invited me to lunch with Amy Carroll Webb that day. I didn't go to lunch, but I didn't miss any Sunday services after that one for about 2.5 years. At UUC, I was awestruck by the chorale. I took the Intro to UU classes and became a member. I joined the drum circle and one of our very first covenant groups. I took a leadership class, a class on Hinduism, and one on our local ecosystem. I studied nonviolent communication with a group led by Ray and Lori, and I attended their elegant Indian wedding. In October 2002, I took over from Susan Hegner as editor of the Octagram. I really, really, really loved that work. It was such a great joy in my life, and then 1 year later, I did not like it at all. As newsletter editor, I got crushed by congregational politics. I felt the board of trustees let me down. My heart was broken, and I resigned from my Octagram job after just 13 monthly issues. The following year, I took on 2 more problematic and unrewarding UUC projects that made 3 failed attempts to feel supported and appreciated. 3 strikes, I was out of here. UUC now has a Making Peace team for conflict resolution. If we'd had it then, I believe we could have mended my broken heart and I would not have run away. I missed being part of a beloved community. I tried the Unity Church near my house and the St. Pete UU Church, and neither was a good fit. However, I'm extremely grateful to the St. Pete UUs for inviting me to their winter solstice ritual in 2007. That powerful ritual included leaving something behind in the old year. I chose to leave behind my loneliness, and I met my boyfriend John 3 days later. In 2016, I was in dire need of spiritual connection. I tried the St. Pete UU Church again on Easter Sunday, and I felt invisible and left in tears. The following Sunday, I came back here. A lot had changed, and yet familiar faces welcomed me, and I knew I was home. I haven't missed many Sunday services since that one. In October that year, I was invited to join the UUC chorale, and I didn't think I could commit because the chorale was required to be here way too early on Sunday mornings, 9 a.m. But I went to the next rehearsal anyway. It was challenging. I barely remembered how to read music, and my voice kind of squeaked and groiled like a rusty muffler. And the choir director was a perfectionist. At the end of that rehearsal, my brain hurt, and my spirit was lifted high. I was totally energized by making music with talented live humans. Wednesday evenings with my chorale family became the best part of every week for me. The chorale's trip to Carnegie Hall in 2019 was the most thrilling event of my life. Traveling with that beloved group was delightful, and harmonizing with 250 live voices and a full orchestra was glorious. At Carnegie Hall, Linda Carroll, Anna Natalie, and I were the only female tenors and the shortest. So we stood side by side in the front row on stage at Carnegie Hall. I'm praying that I'll be standing beside Linda and Anne and the rest of the UU chorale, singing for you right here soon. Thank you, UUC, for the gifts of singing, family, and spirituality. Namaste.
Well, let's see what we can all do when we stand together. My life's journey has been driven by social activism, starting with civil rights and women's rights in my teens in the 1960s. Don't do the math. Or do it and say, hey, she's still standing. The more I've learned about systemic oppression in American laws and the economic consequences of those laws, as well as the cultural prejudices of all types, the more my perspective has grown and the scope of the justice work needed has grown. I became a UU largely to participate in social justice projects, and I decided to plant myself at UUC because of the scope and intentionality of the social justice work here. UUC's deep intention to, this should sound familiar, build a land where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream, inhabited by a people so bold, called to come build the land, my people, we seek. And that's particularly relevant now that we're exploring what it means to be a we congregation instead of an I congregation. To build that land we seek, we have to build ourselves first into people who can build that land. I think we're pretty much there and ready to build. And I invite you to reflect on the work and play that we've been doing over the last couple years and will continue to do. And I hope you're as confident as I am that we can and will build ourselves and build the land that we seek. Speaking of social justice, and to bring this service full circle back to one of Ray's opening comments, I want to introduce you to an important term that I recently discovered related to health justice, to reproductive justice, and that term is bodily autonomy. Who owns your body? How many people think you own your own body? How many have had that assumption challenged? Recently, if you're a woman, our right to control what we do with our own bodies and where we do it. Reproductive rights are one piece of the umbrella issue of bodily autonomy. Say it with me, bodily autonomy. Where we can live. Are we restricted to a reservation? Where we can drive a young female friend across the state line for medical treatment of any type without risking some self-proclaimed vigilante neighbor suing us for helping facilitate an abortion in their mind, forcing us to hire a lawyer to defend ourselves, forcing our friend maybe to reveal her HIPAA information to assist in our defense. That's already the risk in Texas. That broad threat to bodily autonomy infuriates me, in case you couldn't tell. But fury is impotent. Action is potent. Just the action of using the concept, the term, bodily autonomy in every conversation that begins with abortion or reproductive rights, because bodily autonomy rights is an issue that affects every one of us and everyone outside our walls all the time, whether we realize it or not. And I now invite you to exercise your mental and bodily autonomy with intentionality for the rest of this service, for the rest of this day, for the rest of the week, for the rest of your lives.